So this is video one of two that I am doing for my final practicum project and presentation. This video will focus primarily on the networking as well as the findings that I had in my research in the comparative analysis that I did of Division I and Division III coaches. The idea of this research is to get an understanding of the social psychological development that takes place with student athletes between the two divisions, and to create an infographic or a presentation that can be shown to coaches both in high school and in college, as well as recruiting coaches to help athletes make a more informed decision when it comes to the recruiting process. So the Division III philosophy. Division III as a whole puts academics over athletics, and this is shown by the fact that they do not offer athletic scholarship money. While Division I doesn't necessarily have a philosophy statement, they have more of just an about statement, and pretty much states that they are the largest schools, they have the most amount of money, and they're very big on competition. So in terms of that social development and growth component, Division I's philosophy, if that's a part of their philosophy at all, is to come at it from the performance side of things, while the Division III philosophy is to come at it from the soft skill side of things. So the first component I was interested in researching was identity foreclosure. I will primarily focus on what I learned through my networking with the coaches and use the research articles that I had as kind of support for what I'm saying and what I've picked up on through the coaches' interviews. So all these coaches would like to remain semi-anonymous. This is because they're commenting on the division as a whole and other divisions, and they really don't want their name to be associated with potential criticism of other people. So this is one Division I coach coming from a Big Ten school. He competed Division III, but is now coaching Division I. So he believes that athletes are inherently imbalanced. What that means is he believes that athletes need to be foreclosed in that identity, that student athlete identity, for the most part, if they want to be successful. Identity foreclosure is sometimes linked with lack of self-esteem, sometimes a loss of self. It's usually when people haven't broken out of their shell yet. So his reasoning for this is athletes need to be specialized, and the best people in their field, the most high performers, are specialists in their field. So he believes that when you learn to specialize in athletics and learn to perform at that high level, that translates into whatever your next pursuit is after college. Another Division I coach, she competes in the OVC. She has only coached and competed Division I. She said it's a mix of athletes coming out prepared for the real world and not being prepared for the real world. However, it's a part of her coaching philosophy to be talking them through development as a person and getting ready for their career, and more than just being an athlete. The next one is a comment from a Division III athletic director. He is a NAC Division III athletic director in the state of Wisconsin, but he believes that athletes in Division III typically come out with less identity foreclosure, meaning they have an easier time hanging up the spikes, hanging up the cleats, and entering the workforce. And he points to the success that his institution has had with the amount of doctors that have gone on, the amount of people who have gone on into politics and those careers, and they've kind of used their athletics as a jumping board into the next step, as opposed to being hung up on that athletic identity. Next component was grit, psychological capital, and mental toughness. I'm going to focus on grit primarily, but they're all very similar to each other. In order to develop grit, you need 2 years of involvement in one activity, and it needs to be hard work. You need to overcome obstacles. So that's the big thing about grit, is being able to overcome obstacles despite resistance to your goals. So this is the Division I coach from earlier in the Big Ten. He says if you're going to do something, like it and dive head first into it. So his belief is just that. If you don't like something, you're wasting your time doing it. You need to be doing things that you're productive and you're good at. That's not only what's best for you, but it's kind of best for society in that way. A Division III coach. This is a Division III coach who currently is coaching in the NAC. She competed Division I, however, is now coaching Division III. She says the athletes on Division III are less talented, and any success they have is hard fought. She believed that during her time in Division I, a lot of athletes were pampered and didn't have to work very hard. In order to see the success that Division III athletes have to have, just because there's no scholarship involved at Division III. As you can see, that's the same comment from her below. She believes that Division I athletes sometimes are more pampered. So if there's not that hard work overcoming obstacles component, we're not developing grit. So she believes that sometimes Division III athletes, that's where they are able to develop grit, even though they might not be as focused. Leadership development is the next component. I think the important thing to note here is whether it's Division I, Division III, an athletic director, or a coach, everyone's talking about leadership development. So this first quote or idea was each athlete finds their own way to lead and support the team. There's just more opportunities to lead in sports than there is in the classroom. And this is coming from the Big Ten coach. So his idea is every time we go to practice, there's a leadership opportunity out there. However, every time you step in the classroom, you might be listening to a lecture or something along those lines. You don't necessarily get a chance to flex your leadership muscles. So trying to emphasize the extent beyond the sports realm in your time in college, how important leadership is there. That's for our OVC coach made that comment. She just preaches that day in and day out, and it's kind of clear when you see what her alumni are doing. Her alumni within the state of Illinois are kind of famous for just being out there. They're some of the best leaders in the state when it comes to what her coaching tree looks like. The next one is from a Division III athletic director, a little bit of D1 experience on her end, D3 coaching, and now Division III administration, is she would like to establish a leadership mentor program. She's seen it work really well at the past couple programs she's at. This kind of backs up what I've seen in the research is everyone talks about leadership, but if there's not a formalized program, it's hard to develop it in a meaningful or in a really focused way. Sometimes kids just kind of fall off to the side when you talk about it, but you don't have a program to kind of drive it forward. And then the next one is from a Division III coach, and they just say, the culture ultimately decides if leadership development takes place. And they're speaking from a point of they came into a team where the culture wasn't great. So just because they were a team didn't mean there was any leadership development taking place. But now as things have kind of progressed and moved along over the years, the kids who were once freshmen have developed much better as leaders than the seniors of the past. So the big takeaways from my interviews were athletes understand teamwork and cooperation better than the general student body is something that I've noticed through the interviews with the coaches. Division I athletes spend more time focused on their sport. Coaches from all divisions are focused on fostering strong emotional intelligence and leadership characteristics. Almost everyone talks about culture. Division I's lose money on each athlete, while Division III's make money on each athlete. And good coaches put pressure on themselves and don't have to worry about what the administration wants. So kind of breaking down into each of those points, understanding cooperation and teamwork is huge. This bears out in the research that I did, showing that former athletes typically end up in management positions more often than non-athletes. Division I athletes spend more time and focus. That one's kind of self-explanatory. Everyone talks about culture. Not a ton of people have a specific program in place to enforce the culture. I think that's huge. That showed in the research was that if you don't have a system in place to keep the culture alive, then these emotional intelligence and social emotional intelligence characteristics don't grow. So it's really important that coaches and athletic directors really take that seriously. And finally, Division I's lose money on each athlete, while Division III's make money on each athlete. So sometimes Division III's, their athletes might feel like more of a number, since they're just recruiting for the school to bring dollars in, while D1s sometimes they face administrative pressure for those performances, but they're able to defend their athletes a little bit better since there's no financial incentive.